Starliner Media. Starliner Media presents Music Night at the Majestic with your host, Michael Boswell. Brought to you by...
When Signs and Displays Direct was launched 15 years ago, it featured a complete line of banners and stands, product displays, and more. Today, the company is known as SDD and is the industry leader in turnkey, no-inventory POP programs. SDD has expanded into branding programs for both corporate and private label, as well as consulting services for retail showroom design and more. Visit sdd-us.com. That's sdd-us.com. Tell you what, guys, we're actually past our 30 minutes. We haven't even gotten into a ton of stuff. Do you guys have enough time to hang around and get to
whatever you like? It's your show.
We're here.
You know, your party.
Well, I don't want my guests walking out the door.
No. It's totally cool. Yeah.
Well, tell you what, Marvin. Yeah, you're talking about Hank Williams and stuff. I'm going to guess, giving your work in the original incarnation of Lone Justice, that folk, early country had to have a big influence on you.
Well, what's interesting, Willie knows this, but my grandfather, we had Willie and I almost had parallel lives growing up, but I was very close with my grandparents. And my grandfather, who was from Lodz, Poland, he loved country music. In fact, when he passed away, he had over 60 Johnny Cash albums.
Oh, wow.
I never met anybody who liked Cash as much. But he was into Cash. He was into Buck Owens, Lynn Anderson. I don't know if you know this, but Lynn Anderson wrote From Now On, All My Friends Are Going to Be Strangers, which became Merle Haggard's song. And he named his band The Strangers after that Lynn Anderson song. Mm-hmm. Liz Anderson was the writer. Her daughter, Lynn Anderson, was also a country singer, and she had a big hit with Rose Garden. Mm-hmm. And so he was into all, Patsy Cline and Loretta Lynn, all of these country artists. So by the time the early 80s rolled around, I was already into some of this stuff. So it was a real natural transition for me. And I tend to like to divorce myself from my past. So what I was doing musically in another incarnation, I wanted to challenge myself, and so by the time 82 rolled around, it was kind of a lonesome town, Los Angeles, in terms of doing the hybrid of what I might have called Cash and Clash, and but yeah, the country artist definitely had an influence. But I see a connection between all of it. I worked with an artist, Gray Delisle, and we did a country version of Bohemian Rhapsody. I saw it as a country ballad, a murder ballad. That's how I heard it. So it's a perception. It's not just wrapped in the style and the image of the artist.
Yeah, we're actually doing a show with Gray, recording it next week.
Oh, good. Good.
Excellent.
You'll have a good time.
Yeah, well,
she's wonderful.
We did back at the holidays. We did a little short episodes with our tongues firmly planted in cheek, called our Music Night Holiday Extravaganza.
Oh yeah,
and
right.
Gray was there, and we made her version of "Oh Holy Night."
Oh yeah,
the song of the day and everything.
Oh, so, good. That was nice. Well, thank you for doing that.
Oh, it was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to doing the full episode next week.
So, good. As you should.
Now, Willie, obviously folk was a big influence on you as well with the Balancing Act.
Yes. When I joined the Balancing Act, I was at Rhino Records in West LA, which was, a big breeding ground again. It was a very influential record store. And the late, great Gary Stewart, who was a clerk there, who ended up becoming an executive at Rhino, and later an executive over at Apple iTunes. He's one of the people that was responsible for the curated playlist idea was Gary's. So Gary used to work at Rhino Records, and they had and I'd go there all the time. You know, if I wasn't going to buy records at Aron's, I was at Rhino, in between, you know, being in bands and stuff. And there was an ad that was posted at the Rhino store, and it said wanted you know, musicians for lively, interesting, you know, folk rock oriented band influences. Nick Drake, Minutemen, The Clash, you know, Richard Thompson, Bert Jansch, whatever, like all this great stuff. And I go, oh, that's really interesting. Marvin actually had gotten that same ad prior to me. He called up Jeff Davis, who later became my partner in the Balancing Act, and he said, I have my own thing going on, which was Lone Justice. He said, but you should call my friend Willie. He'd be perfect for this band. So that once again, you know, the symbiosis that Marvin and I have had over the years.
Yeah.
So Jeff Davis called me up, and I joined the Balancing Act, and our thing was like to, in a way, we almost saw ourselves as like a modern skiffle band. You know, which, as you know, skiffle was like the English equivalent of like American, you know, folk music, played very energetically and simply and stuff. We had, you know, of course, wider influences than skiffle, but folk was a big part of what we were into, especially in that age of everybody, the post-punk years, you know, similar to what Marvin's discovery, you know, in Lone Justice, you know, he found, you know, Maria McKee and Ryan Hedgecock and the original band, and they were all in this sort of mutual path towards, you know, energizing country music with the kind of gospel 2-beat, the 2/4 beat. In the Balancing Act, we were kind of trying to, not doing a country thing, but a folk thing with a similar kind of energy. We also had influences, you know, from jazz and avant-garde music and more sort of noisy stuff, Velvet Underground and Minutemen and stuff like that. So we try to incorporate all of that in our music, just as Marvin tried to incorporate in Lone Justice, like that sort of Clash, you know, punk energy into country writing, you know, country music.
I just wanted to say that, you know, when you look back on it, it seems like a very simple thing to put together a band like Lone Justice or the Balancing Act, right? So before I joined the band, we were actually auditioning bass players. We could not find a bass player in Los Angeles. I would go to record stores. So this is like 83, 80, around then, 83. I'd go to records. I'd go to record stores. I'd go to Guitar Center, and I'm looking for a bass player. Oh, well, I play bass. So what are you guys into? Well, we're into Creedence Clearwater and Merle Haggard. The guy looked at me and go, who are those guys? Who's Creedence Clearwater? I said, well, John Fogerty. I go, I don't know about them. Well, who's Merle Haggard? I said, you know what? This isn't
You're the wrong guy.
Out. So what happened is that the roadie for the group, they had just gotten booked to play a tour with Rank and File up and down the coast of California. And the bass player for Lone Justice left. We could not find a bass player. There was one guy that I liked who was very good. I thought he would have been great, but he didn't want to join a band. He wanted to be a solo artist. Okay. And so the roadie came to a rehearsal one time, and he goes, here you go. I just spent $75 on this Fender bass. You know all the songs. Just learn how to play this thing. And that's how I ended up joining the band. If it was up to me at that time, I would have been more than happy if they found a bass player not joining the band. You know, I didn't need to do that. But, you know, bass was like an integral, you know, as much as I love the blues records, we were going for kind of like a heavy bass, as Willie pointed out, kind of a gospel country, boom, 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 you know, feel to the music, you know. So it sounds like an easy thing to do, you know, but
it's not.
It was hard finding like-minded people. And even after all these years, Willie and I are still connected because it wasn't that many people that I felt that connected to at that time when I met Willie. So that strengthens the bond. You know.
Yeah, well, I'll tell
Right.
you, Marvin.
And further, similar to Marvin's, adventures with the bass, we were an acoustic oriented band in the balancing act, and when we auditioned drummers, we had people originally when we were looking for drummers, people would come and they bring like double bass drum kits and like 50-piece drum kits with like 10 cymbals and gongs and all this stuff, and we'd be like, whoa,
A little too much.
So we ended up putting out an ad that said, wanted drummer for semi-acoustic folk punk act, no experience preferred. Because we thought, okay, if there's somebody that's interested in learning with just, we wanted it to just be like a snare drum, a floor tom, a wood block, and percussion, and keep, you can generate a lot of rhythm from guitars and from implied rhythm rather than overt rhythm, which is why a lot of those, blues and folk records are so great too, is because they don't bludgeon you with like the kind of obvious beat that rock provides. So when this guy Robert Blackman showed up, and his favorite bands were the Kinks and XTC and and the Beatles and Nick Drake and stuff like that, we were like, this is our guy. And he's like, he didn't know how to play drums, but as soon as he kind of got around to like playing, he had a natural feel for it, and he knew exactly what not to play. And so we were like, you're in. He just fit right away.
Yeah.
I think that it's
sometimes
similar to
sometimes the limitations of a player help, especially in a band when you're trying to forming a sound and a point of view. Like my limitations as a bass player, I wasn't like one of those bass players who've been playing since I was a kid and dreaming of being in a band. I was dreaming of not being in a band. I mean, if I was going to do a band, I'm going to do a band with Willie or other people. I write my own songs. I can do that on my own, but for me to join a band as a bass player is like, that was nowhere in the cards for me. So when it happened, it was like, I felt like my limitations became a strength and an asset in terms of developing a sound for the band and with the band, and everyone accepted it. And so I agree, knowing the balancing act, having seen them, from literally day one and very early shows and all of that, there was a spirit and an energy that when they all connected at the same time, you felt something happen. It would be like if you lit 4 matches at one time. You can't tell them apart. It doesn't matter.
Right.
You just feel this kinetic energy. And I think that that's what great bands, that's what unites them. Yeah.
Well,
and that
is
love
key.
of chemistry is key. Yeah. And I think, again, you can't imagine another drummer for the Velvet Underground than Mo Tucker, can you? I mean,
well, I'm a fan of Loaded. I'm a Loaded fan, so
I love Loaded too. But I mean, I just think like she's like
she
the
was
perfect.
Great. She helped create the Velvet Underground sound. In fact, I saw their last tour in '93 in East Germany with Mo Tucker, and she plays the kick drum with her hand with a stick. There's no foot action going on. It was very good, very loud. But I'm with you on that, Willie. Like finding her limitation, but she has such a great feel and an intuitive understanding of how to play the song, and that by the time they got to Loaded, it was. I think it's like it's easy to replace anyone, to imitate, right?
Yeah.
So by the time Loaded came out, which is one of my favorite albums, by the time they put someone in, it was easy for for a drummer to come in and go, oh, you want kind of like that. What's a challenge is when you're starting from day one, ground zero, and you're building and you have no idea what the sound of your band is yet, and you get people in a room to go, how does this sound? Do we got something here? And sometimes the limitations can become an attribute.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say before, Marvin, we talked about Lone Justice and the blend of country and gospel, what have you. I thought one of the songs in that first album that really captured that was Wait Till We Get Home.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah. Wait Till We Get Home. It came out of like a Ryan Hitchcock riff. And then, Maria, Ryan and I got together and just kind of came up with their final arrangement of their song. And so that was their thing. And it kind of had an Aretha, kind of vibe to it, but I'm glad you liked that one. It kind of captured, it was a song that we could play live,
Right. I mean, it's like a, country gospel rave up.
Right. Yeah. That's a good example of it. Yeah. I remember that day going to Maria's apartment with Ryan on that song, working up the background vocals on it. And it was fun. It was a fun song to play.
Yeah. Now, one of the thing with you guys, you have done so many different things. It's like, your career just kind of like tangents off into so many different ways. Now, Willie, you wound up doing a lot of stuff in movie and TV composing.
Yeah. I got into, I had, after the Balancing Act broke up in 89, I'd formed another band with Jeff Davis from the Balancing Act called Almighty Hi-Fi, and that lasted a few years. And then I started getting work as a session musician and touring musician, and so I started like playing with a bunch of different people, Victoria Williams, Sid Straw, Michael Penn. I did some stuff with Ricky Lee Jones. Played with just a ton of people, and then in the mid to late 90s, I had a band called Spanish Kitchen, which became Mystery Pop, and we had one album that was produced by Doug Feiger, who was the late leader of the Knack. Right. And then an old friend of mine named Joey Peters, who was the drummer in Grantley Buffalo, he and I had met in the mid 80s playing with a singer-songwriter named Carmeg DeForest, who was like singing these sort of punk rock type songs, social protest punk rock songs on a ukulele. Very interesting guy, Carmeg, very good songwriter. That's when Joey and I first met. But Grantley Buffalo had taken off in the 90s. And when they broke up around the same time as my band broke up, we had gotten both of us had gotten interested in scoring film and television music. The Balancing Act's old manager, Gary Calamar, became a music supervisor. And he encouraged me to get into film and TV scoring, as did Van Dyke Parks, who was a very good friend and also like a mentor. And Peter Himmelman, another great singer-songwriter friend. All of those guys kind of encouraged me to go into film and television composition. So I started, studying that and, learning from people like Bernard Herrmann and Ennio Morricone and wow. John Barry and stuff. I would just immerse myself in those scores. And so I started writing for independent films and television, which I did for many years, and I still do from time to time. So that was Joey and I had did that together for about 20 years. Marvin and I always stayed tight through all our travails and, different musical episodes. I played with a bunch of different people, even while doing film and TV stuff. I never stopped being a side musician and being a collaborator. So Marvin and I had joined the synagogue. We're both Jewish, and we both joined the synagogue in West Los Angeles. And one day we're at services, and the rabbi sees us when during a certain part of the service where you walk the Torah, the Hebrew Bible around, for all the congregants, to observe. And we were wearing suits and hats, and the rabbi looks at us and he goes, "The Holy Brothers." And also at that service was our good friend Leonard Cohen, who was also a member of that synagogue. And I'd met Leonard at a friend of mine, Larry Klein, bass player, producer, used to be married to Joni Mitchell, incredible talent. At his wedding reception, I was sitting with the rabbi and with Leonard Cohen, who I'd met some years prior. And Leonard started going to services after hearing the rabbi who had officiated at Larry's wedding. So it was all this kind of interconnected stuff. And Leonard and I had done some, work together. And Leonard was one of our first champions in the Holy Brothers, because we put together this band. Marvin goes, well, the only thing now that's left to do is for us to form a band. We have a name. Now we need to form a band.
Yeah, let's make a record.
Let's make a record. Exactly.
Right. That was my response. When the rabbi said that, I looked at Willie, go, okay, let's make a record now. What's interesting about that moment, it was really kind of a crystallization, I think, for both Willie and I. But I think what it did when I said, let's make a record, in the days and weeks to follow, all of a sudden I started to put songs that I had built up that I thought, oh, these songs would work for an album by the Holy Brothers. It started to kind of take on a shape and a point of view of its own that was more spiritual leaning. And then I remember one day calling Willie up. I played him a song on the phone. I said, I've got something new. And I played him My Name is Sparkle. He goes, oh, we're recording that one. And then all of a sudden that became like a centerpiece to the record, and eventually the title track. And it became, My Name is Sparkle is really a concept about the character Sparkle, who is androgynous. We don't identify age. And Sparkle is on a quest looking for God, goes to Jerusalem, and instead of finding God, finds Elvis. And the story goes on, gets disillusioned, considers suicide. And then in Act 2, we divided the album up in Act 1 and Act 2, actually sees that life is worth living, and the album ends with End of Suffering. And so that really helped in that moment. What's really interesting, like any great moments in life, that are crystallized and remembered. I don't know what would have happened if Willie or I did not attend that service together. It might have just been a hello, Rabbi, great to see you today. But when that happened, it was like the spiritual unification with the concept, and then that really set it on fire, really did. And so we're in it now.
I was going to say, it sounds like a case of divine intervention going on here.
I'm a big believer in that. In fact, one of the songs on the album is Divine Love, that actually addresses that point of view or emotion. So these things happen, and so that's really the birth of the Holy Brothers. And it's as if once it started, it really felt like it was meant to be. It was the most natural thing in the world for Willie and I to go, okay, you're no longer just singing along with me on my songs today. This isn't just my band or your project. It really became the two of us and our point of view. And I've told Willie this more than once, is that even though, I write the songs, I really see, the Holy Brothers as Willie's band. I have so many songs that I'll present, and Willie go, yeah, that's a good song, but I don't think we should record that one right now. Okay. And I never personalize it. What do you mean you don't like that song? It's not like that at all. So, and then one time we were recording a song for the second album that we're in the middle of. I remember we had a mix and we were happy with it. And then a few days later, Willie calls up and he goes, well, I got to tell you, I listened to the mix. I go, great. How do you like it? He goes, we got to go and redo it. It's not right. He says, I'm not happy with our vocals. We got to strip it down. We got to take it to the next level. I said, whatever you say, let's try it. We had it. Anybody else who heard the record would have put it out, right? We go in, we redo the vocals, and then, whatever it is that we have to add to it. And we did a remix on it. And I think now it's a much better record because of it. So for me, the process is really a lot of letting go, being in the Holy Brothers with Willie, and I think that I don't know the inner workings of Simon and Garfunkel, but Willie and I have talked about this a lot, that something happened when the two of them, Simon and Garfunkel, made records that sounded distinctively different than when either one of them went on their own. Never
Mhm.
happened again. Never happened. And I really feel that working with Willie, that when I do things on my own, it goes a particular way. But when the two of us are together, it's some kind of combination, as you say, some kind of divine intervention of musical, energy and synergy between us that creates what happens in the Holy Brothers. It's as if there's a third entity in the room when we're singing. It's not just the two voices. A third entity appears, and that's the Holy Brothers.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. Fully agree with that assessment that Marvin just made. And also, I also want to add that, Marvin and I came up when we were making records in the 80s and into the 90s. And maybe it's better now, but there was a period where bands were not valued. Like records were the thing where people would go, perfectly good bands would be either broken up or they'd be augmented by egotistical producers who were like, I'm just going to get all the great session musicians and plop them into this band and kind of destroy the chemistry and the uniqueness, and alter it, and not often for the positive, in my assessment. And so I think Marvin and I, having learned, that painful lesson, that sometimes painful lesson, in our own experiences, I think the sanctity of a band, or the sanctity of a unit, is really important. And I think that we hold the Holy Brothers as very sacred and sacrosanct, and that we will be uncompromising as possible, to make that unit as strong as it can be. We really value our friendship, and we also are not driven by ego and attachment. We're both, I think, committed to making the unit as strong as it can be, and we looked to the touchstones of bands and artists and units that we both revere, and we learned lessons from them as to, like Marvin was saying, Simon and Garfunkel, whatever you might say about them, in particular Paul Simon as a solo artist, it's not that he didn't write great songs after they broke up. It's not to say that they didn't make worthwhile music afterwards, but they never achieved separately what they achieved together. And I think that's true for Marvin and myself. I think whatever else we do in our musical lives, what we have created and what we have fashioned in the Holy Brothers is extremely unique. And I think we really don't take it for granted. I think we acknowledge its specialness and its uniqueness. And I think we take great care to make sure that unit stays strong and stays interested and curious and energized every day.
Well, what's really interesting about the approach, Michael, is that, you know, every day is completely is very unpredictable in terms of what's going to happen musically, right? And so we're the Holy Brothers, right? So we aren't a folk band, we aren't a funk band, we aren't a rock band. We're the Holy Brothers,
Right.
So when you listen to the White Album, what kind of music is that? It's the Beatles.
Mhm.
You listen to Exile on Main Street. What kind of music is that? It's
Mhm.
so the diversity of our favorite artists is what interests is what we find of interest. So like an example on the title track for the album, My Name Is Sparkle. I recorded a vocal and an electric guitar on my 4-track cassette machine and brought it in the studio. And when we listen to, we go, well, let's just put vocals on it. So the guitar on the album is a recording of a cassette of my guitar. We put vocals on it, and that's our record on that particular song. That was the right thing to do. It felt right, you know. And on another song, we had James Gatson mutually, you know, Willie and I both love great drummers. And James was, you know, was a friend and a fan. He liked my song, liked what we were doing. And he plays on the album. But one day he couldn't make it to the studio, wasn't feeling well. So Willie and I were at the studio, and I said, hey, James isn't here. And we were going to cut the song Keep Crushing Me with James, you know, maybe more like a Stax kind of record, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and
Right.
Otis or something. And we said, well, why don't we it's just the two of us here in the studio with the engineer, David Vaught, the great late David Vaught. And we said, well, let's just record it, the two of us, see what happens. And so that recording is a guitar and two voices, and that's it. You know, so we're capable of doing the band thing and adding horns, and Willie does these incredible horn arrangements for the records. But sometimes we're in the moment and it goes into a direction that, you know, it can have that kind of power and intimacy, and that can work. And we never know what's going to happen. I can throw Willie really just about anything, you know, and if he digs it, he doesn't go, oh, well, I don't play that kind of music. You know, we have this one song we're mapping out our second and third album. Like My Name is Sparkle is really like a trilogy of the character Sparkle, right? So we have a new song that has a drum machine on it because in COVID, it's hard to get together with people. So I've got a couple drum machines that I mess around with. And he goes, that don't change that groove. That's it. That's what we got to use. You know, let's add maracas on it, you know, so we never know which way it's going to go. And I love it. I love the diversity. And we talk about our love for different kinds of artists. Willie's really into Ellington, you know, I might be, you know, into, you know, Brian Eno, and then we switch, you know, I'll find an Ellington track. I go, oh my God, this is incredible. What is this? You know, he'll find something, turn me onto it. And it's a never ending river that is between us, you know?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that's what it is. That's what it is. So now we make records for people to be a part of the river with us.
Well, you know, if the recording industry structure today was like it was 40 years ago, you guys wouldn't be able to do this record.
Well, it's really hard to say. I mean, the one thing that I would say that I really appreciated about when I was working the record store, you know, indie artists were making records, you know, and when I've done, you know, panels and spoken to college kids, I'll ask the question and I'll say, how many people here think Columbia Records is an independent label? And nobody raises their hand. How many people think Warner Brothers is independent? And nobody raised their hand. And I'll say, in all due respect, they're both independent labels. We don't live in Russia. We don't live where a government controls what it is that you do, right? So I've been, you know, writing songs since I was a kid in junior high and in high school, you know, and I didn't need permission from a record company or anybody to do this. So had we wanted to release the record 40 years ago, we could have. At that time, you know, it was more prevalent to say, well, let's get on a label, right? But the real question is, are you releasing the record that you want to release? I'll share a quick story. Bob Dylan was on the radio in the 80s, and he was promoting Empire Burlesque. No matter what you think of the record, it's got some amazing songs on it. Clean Cut Kid and Emotionally Yours. And
Dark Eyes.
Yeah, right. And a caller called in and said, wow, you know, how does it feel that you could release a record that you really believe in, that you released the record that you really wanted to make? And there was a pause. And Dylan said on the radio, he goes, I've been doing that my whole life. That's what I do. And that's really what it's about. It's not about the labels. The labels are going to come and go. Distribution is going to come and go. One time I drove to Vegas to see Ahmet Erdogan as a keynote speaker, right? And what he said at that time, and he said, I've only had one job in my life, and that's I've been the president of Atlantic Records for 50 years. And he said, everyone's worried about the internet. Everyone's worried about distribution. Everyone's worried about change. He goes, every time change has happened, everyone lived in fear. He goes, don't live in fear. He said, just write great songs, make great records, and the technology is going to change, and then it'll change again. So when 78s were happening, radio came out, and then people said, well, why would they need to buy our records if you can hear them on radio? And then 45s came out, then 33, and then the cassette was going to kill the LP, and then the CD was going to kill the vinyl. Every time it was taken, change was adopted with a sense of fear, right? But if you let go of the fear, right, then all of a sudden you're just writing songs, making records, doing exactly what you want to do the way that you want to do it. And that's all really that matters. The technology that we're in right now, maybe next year it'll be something else other than Zoom. Maybe it'll be something else other than some other digital platform. I don't really care one way or the other, because the song and the record could be adapted to any future distribution model. That's why you can hear songs. You can hear Elmo James, a record from 60, 70 years ago. You could still hear it now digitally. He never heard the word digital. John Lennon never lived to see a CD. Did that matter to any of us? What matters is his song. That's all that matters. It's not about the industry. It's not about the distribution. All of that is a separate discussion on how do you get the records out. That's a separate discussion. But the actual creation of the music and the freedom to actually release it and to be able to stand up for yourself as an artist going, this is me. This is who I am. This is what I believe in. Willie's the person I'm working with in this band. That's unbreakable, period. I'll take a bullet for Willie. It's that strong. It's it's undeniable to me. I don't care if people like it or they don't like it. You like what we're doing, great. You don't, that's okay too. Maybe you'll figure it out. And that's what's happened to us, and we keep going and more time goes on and it keeps building. And, like I said, we're mapping the next 2 records, out. And I encourage that in people. Do what you want to do with your life. Live the life you want to live. Believe what you believe, and find people to support a vision and support your vision. If you're lucky enough to find that in your life, then you're leading a pretty good life. This isn't about living in fear. There's too many people releasing records. 10,000 people a day are releasing records on the internet. If you want to look at what's wrong, then you could go down that point of view. I'd rather look at what is good, and what's really going on is that our ability to communicate right here and right now, and nobody can stop that, and nobody can stop me from writing songs. Nobody can stop Willie and I from doing what we do. That's what this whole thing is about. And if anybody's listening or watching, that's the encouragement. That's the message from myself or the Holy Brothers. Do what you were meant to do with your life. Do what you were born to do. My grandfather used to say, if you don't have a feeling for it, don't do it. But if you got a feeling for it, you know it, no matter what anybody says, and everybody, all the greats have been laughed at. Prince was booed when he opened up for the Stones. Bob Dylan was booed when he went, right. Dylan, I remember talking to Robbie Robertson when he played with Dylan and they went electric. And Robbie looked at me and goes, why us? We were really good. And they were really good. None of that matters. None of that matters. It's that inner strength that you have that you can get through that fire. And that's what today's about. In the times that we're living in, it's like we can't even get together and sit inside a restaurant over a cup of coffee. We got to remind each other how important our lives are, and to announce to each other that our lives have value and what we do is important, and that we don't have to wait for the outside world to open up for us to be opened up and to express ourselves. If the restaurants are going to take 1 month or going to take 5 years to open up, it's like, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. If we got to record our album on cassette, that's what we're going to do. Whatever it's going to take, right? My life is not revolved around some politician and what he has to say. You know, nobody in Washington is worried about me and going, gee, I wonder if Marvin cares about what we're voting on today. No, they are there to serve us, and I am here to serve the song, and we're here to serve the song. That's what we do. That's what it's about. And we got to remind, these are very, very trying times for people. People are having a really hard time emotionally, psychologically. It's very difficult to get through it. I just want, if you're listening, it's like, this is our time that we got to remind each other how important we are, and who we are as individuals is the most important thing. That's what's going to get us through. That's going to be just as important as the vaccine.
Yep.
You know, because the word depression wasn't invented in 2020 with lockdown. People were not losing hope the minute lockdown happened. Right?
Yeah.
So we got to remind each other that we got to keep faith and hope alive in our lives right now, because we've never experienced this kind of adversity before in our lives. You know, we can't visit our families, we can't travel. You know, this is really difficult. And we've gotten responses from people saying the music of the Holy Brothers makes more sense to us now than it ever did before, that the message of the Holy Brothers is a really important one. That's what this is about. This isn't about, oh, please buy my record. You know, it's like, that would be a lot easier lane to go on. There are enough people selling you some record that they don't even believe in, but they're selling it to you. You know, they might as well work for Nike, you know, or Chevron or something. This is not about that. This is soul music. You know, we want people to experience something in their own lives. This isn't even about our record. This is about a spiritual movement to announce to people that if you're listening, live your life, turn the lights on. And I mean that physically, metaphorically, any way you want to take it. That's what this is about, a movement, a spiritual movement. This isn't about, oh, please buy my record, it's on Spotify. I don't care about that. If you dig the music and you dig the record, that's great. But if you can improve your life a little bit by hearing a song, or even by hearing this, and your life is 1% better. I have this philosophy about producing records that I call it producer math. If I work with an artist, whether it's us or anybody else, and I can make each song on your record 10% better, and I do that 10 times, that means I've made your album 100% better. So I know I'm joking about that, you know, but if someone's listening, this isn't about, I don't need to prove I can write a song. Those days are gone. I'm way past that. I don't need to prove that I need to hear myself talk. I don't need to do that. Why am I here? Why are we here? To announce that this is a spiritual movement, that we want to change the world one single person at a time. That if you're listening, you go, wow, I am going to get through this day. It's hard, but I'm going to get through this day. Then that's what this is all about. If you want to just talk to someone who's only interested in selling records, Willie knows me for decades and decades. That has never been my motivation. I love the fact that what I'm about can reach people, you know, but the motivation is really coming from a very pure standpoint, you know, and I encourage other people to be a part of that movement. You know, I don't want to hear stories of people being despondent. I don't want to see stories of political fighting in the streets. What does that get me or anybody else? I don't care who you voted for. I just care that you're alive and that you're a human being and that you have a heart and I have a heart. We don't have to agree, but we can agree to be alive together and be in this world, and that whatever it is that you're doing with your life, make it come to life. Don't keep it a secret. I don't want to be part of a secret. I'm not hiding from my Jewish heritage or our Jewish heritage, but I'm not a preacher. I'm in no conflict with anybody in anybody's religion or non-religion. That's not what this is about.
Yeah.
This is about sheer inspiration, bringing to people. That's what I want to bring to the world. That if anyone is listening, that's the simplicity of it. That's really it. That's what the record's about. Sparkle was on a quest looking for God, and in album 2 is still looking, right?
Yep.
And it's and so that's what this is about. We're all on a quest in our own way. You want to call it something else, you want to call it nothing else, you don't relate to it, it's fine. But if you're within earshot or eyeshot of us, just know that the most important thing is not you buying a record by us, but just saying, wow, I heard someone actually care if I'm alive or not, and I do. And without you as a human being, this world doesn't exist. Without people, it's just a bunch of trees. And I like trees as much as anybody, but I never heard a tree write a song. I've heard tree inspire songs, but I've never heard a tree write a song. That's what we're here for. We're here to elevate, the consciousness of individuals, and if that can lead to something else and inspire someone's life, that's all this is about. That's what the record's about. That's what Willie and I are about. That's what the people who are around us are about, And if you're about the negative and you want to destroy people and you want to hurt people's lives, I don't care what party you're in. That doesn't matter to me. Are you a good person? Are you doing with your life with what you were truly meant to be doing with your life? That when you pick up the phone, I'm going to share a quick story about this. And Willie knows this. I taught songwriting to cellmates in jail from the Guitar Jail Door organization.
Jail Guitar Doors.
Jail Guitar Doors. Yeah.
Wayne Kramer from the MC5.
Wayne Kramer, MC5 brought me into it. So after they checked me out, you can go inside. Oh, and they give me like 5 or 6 students, but one of the guys, all of them had hardcore stories. One of them included was a crack addict. I wasn't there to judge him at all, but I asked all of the, let's just say, call them students, for lack of a better word. I looked at him. I said, are you allowed to have a pen, right? Are you allowed to have a notebook, right? You get a notebook. He says, yeah. I said, tonight, I want you to write a sentence in your notebook. Tomorrow, write another sentence. And the next day, do that in the morning and at night. Well, then I went in for once a week. This went on for months. The next week I showed up. He had a notebook that was filled. Wow. He said, I called my mama up and I said, Mama, he called her his mama from jail. Not a kid. He called his mama up from jail and he said, Mama, I'm writing. And he said, I made my mama cry. She didn't know I could write. I didn't know I could write. And I said, the pen will set you free. The pen will get you out of jail. Because once you're out, if you want to do something that you have a bad tendency for, you want to do drugs, you want to break into someone's home, you're obsessed with someone, you write that down in a notebook, what your obsessions are and what you want to do that's not the right thing to do. No cop is going to knock on your car door and say, what are you writing? Writing will set you free. The pen will set you free. And I saw for a moment someone's life was changed. That's what this existence is about, for us to influence each other. Because sometimes, as we all know, sometimes we don't have that person in our lives. And we make that we find inspiration from. or people don't care around us enough to say what you do is important, what you do matters. And we have to remind each other about that. That's what this is about. That's what the record's about. That's who Sparkle is. That's what Willie and I are about. Not here to preach any particular point of view, or if you follow this particular path, you're going to get to the other side. And no, that's not what it's about. We're not here to give answers. We're just here to say, what's the question? Let's ask each other the question. What is important to you? Answer that question, whether it takes a day or a lifetime. And sometimes certain things take a lifetime, and other things, come quicker to certain people. But that, to me, is what all of this is about right now.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, talking about the album, you've
Yeah.
got a couple of videos that
Okay.
let's talk about the videos.
Okay. Willie, go ahead.
So we have Elvis in Jerusalem, which is essentially Marvin's partner Joan she's an incredible. She and her sister are incredible puppeteers, and I think their company is called Pop Culture Passionistas. Is that right, Marvin?
Right.
Yeah. So they've done Tom Petty, they've done Merle Haggard, they've done all sorts of people in pop culture, and they did us as well
as puppets. Yeah,
as puppets, right? And so they did these puppets of us that are so accurate, and so fun and irreverent and life affirming that we just decided to do this very simple video for the song Elvis in Jerusalem with the Holy Brothers puppets. So that's the first video. And then the second one, My Name is Sparkle, also from the album, is our friend Frederick Taylor, but he goes by the name Frederick. He's an award-winning filmmaker and documentarian who lives in, he splits his time between Atlanta and Nashville. He's working on a documentary on the Holy Brothers. So one of our early gigs, Fred came to LA and filmed us. And the My Name is Sparkle video is shot in beautiful black and white. And it also sort of dovetails on another movie that he's doing is on a kid who's a early teenager by this point, who's transgender. And the parents of this transgender person really connected to the Holy Brothers and connected to the song My Name is Sparkle. So the movie that Fred is working on this transgender person is going to use the song My Name is Sparkle as maybe the title sequence for the film. So some of that should be in this video as well, in the My Name is Sparkle video.
Nice.
Right.
And then we also have
go ahead. Yeah.
We also have another video called Lift You Up, which is not on the album. This is a standalone single. And this is based on a song that Marvin had for years, on a riff and an idea that Marvin had for years that was encouraged by Frederick to kind of develop. And so we turned this into, kind of like a very hard-hitting, uplifting, a song. And Fred happened to be in Atlanta during the Rayshard Brooks funeral and during the time of the George Floyd murder last summer. And so he has taken a lot of film footage of the Rayshard Brooks funeral and other elements that he also spliced and put together and edited into this very hard-hitting film. And it was also Fred's idea. He's also friends with the Martin Luther King Jr. family.
Okay.
And he knows a guy named Stefan Ferguson who has this incredible gift for he sort of like becomes the voice of Dr. King. and he is also has the approval and the endorsement of the King family. And he goes and all over and actually does the "I Have a Dream" speech and other speeches by Dr. King. And people are moved beyond belief. They're crying. They're blown away by Stefan's inhabiting of the Dr. King character. And so Lift You Up, in Lift You Up, it was Frederick's idea to have Stefan recite Marvin's lyrics, parts of Marvin's lyrics, as the voice of Dr. King. And so those got incorporated into the song and into the video. So for people who are listening or watching this, there's the songs from the My Name is Sparkle album that have videos, which are Elvis in Jerusalem and the title track My Name is Sparkle. And the new thing that we have is Lift You Up, which is a new song that is not on the Sparkle album, but it's a standalone single and video. And we heartily recommend that our viewers watch all of those videos.
And we will link to those.
Great.
Well, tell you what, guys, we are way past our original intended 30 minutes.
Time to go to sleep.
You got more than you bargained for
late
with us, right?
Yeah, this never happens on this show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, Willie.
Mo warn you.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate you having us, Michael.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I hope you guys have as well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, Willie. Yeah, at the beginning you commented on our Love and Spoonful album on the wall here.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I did. Right.
Oh,
right.
Marvin, I'm sorry.
So very quickly, one of the ensembles that I perform in is a group called the Wild Honey Orchestra. And we perform these charity concerts for autism every year. And we pick, and it's an all-star group of musicians. I'm not going to go down the list. People can look it up on YouTube or go to the Wild Honey Foundation on Facebook. But we've played with all sorts of different people. And we basically take an artist, and we assemble this all-star cast. And we do that artist's music for an evening at the Alex Theater in Glendale, California, and they're sold out every year. We've done the Beach Boys with Al Jardine. We've done Buffalo Springfield with Richie Furay. We've done the band with Garth Hudson, and this year we did last year. The last live event that a lot of people in LA experienced before lockdown was we did the music of the Love and Spoonful with the three surviving members of the Love and Spoonful, with John Sebastian, Joe Butler, and Steve Boone. And we backed them up doing an entire evening of Spoonful music, and it was a highlight for a lot of people.
It just sounds great.
Yeah, it was incredible.
Yeah.
So, I was just listening the other day, our friend John Cruth, right?
Hi, John.
Willie? He wrote this incredible article about Fred Neil. Hopefully by the time this is being aired, his article is available. Really great article. And so it led me to check out the Bleecker and McDougal album by Fred Neil. And if you don't know who Fred Neil is, he's quite a songwriter. He wrote Everybody's Talking. That was a Midnight Cowboy that Harry Nilsson covered. And on the early recordings, it's John Sebastian on harp.
Yeah.
On the Fred Neil recordings.
Wow.
But what was interesting about the article is that Fred Neil was he was not really into playing the record company game. So the producer would literally, they're all waiting in the studio for him, and the producer would have go to his house, wake him up 6 at night and go, "Hey, we're in the studio right now." Oh, gee, really? I got to record, So a friend of his, he went to a friend's house who happened to have a couple mics and an Ampex tape recorder. He really thought that Fred would never finish his album, so he recorded an album in his living room. And it just got released by Third Man Records.
Oh wow!
And I found a record store in the Bay Area and just ordered it. So I'm waiting for it. right now. But it's not available digitally. It's only like a limited run on vinyl, and some of the songs hadn't come out before. And but John Sebastian, in fact, Willie introduced me to him at the sound check of the show Willie was talking about. And Willie says, he's a big Yank Rachel fan, and Yank Rachel is my favorite mandolin player of all time, period, end of story. He plays electric blues mandolin and acoustic blues mandolin as well. That's what really flipped me out about mandolin was Yank Rachel. When I heard him, I totally connected to blues mandolin, kind of changed the way I thought about the instrument. But when I mentioned it to John Sebastian, he knew all about Yank Rachel. In fact, one time I don't know if you know this, Willie, I ran into John Sebastian at a restaurant.
Yeah, you told me.
In Nashville.
Yeah.
And a mutual friend said, oh, this is, introduced us. And I had my mandolin with me. And I said, are you into Yank Rachel? And because I happen to have the mandolin that it was the same model Harmony Electric that Yank used. And he said, am I into Yank Rachel? He goes, I produced his last records. I said, whoa, I had no idea. So when you talk about the diversity of an artist, from Sebastian playing with Fred Neil to him producing Yank Rachel, sometimes people will go, oh yeah, that's the guy that did Do You Believe in Magic? But if you really dig a little bit deeper, you'd be surprised what you find, especially when you run into somebody. It's like I would have had, how would I know that? It's not even something that information sometimes isn't found online. You know, so you have to, like we were talking about earlier, Michael, you got to dig for this information, and the stuff that you find in real life sometimes is the deeper information you can't just find in the shallow end, of the digital age,
Yep. I say, we were talking about the LPs and stuff before, I appreciate the fact that if I hear something, new or whatever, and I want it, I can get it instantaneously.
Yeah.
However, it is completely devoid of that intrinsic feeling of getting the album, slicing the cellophane so I could slide the LP out, having the liner notes on the jacket, the smell of the vinyl, the smell of the packaging, putting it on the turntable, hearing the needle drop for the first time on it. Yeah, you lose all of that.
Yeah, it's definitely a visceral experience, and it's the thing about it is that I'm really happy to hear that a new generation of people who are getting into music are getting into vinyl. It's not nostalgia. How could it be nostalgia for someone who's never experienced it? It's just that it's the most potent way to experience an album. And the albums are designed as a side one, side two experience. It wasn't an accident that certain songs will open a record, certain songs will close an album. It's part of the design of the play. It's a theater piece. It's a movie. It's a film, right? What happened with CD was something that continues in the digital age. There's no ceiling on the format. You can't have a play that goes on for 4 hours. You can't have a movie for 4 hours. There are exceptions, of course. Why is someone releasing an album with 27 songs and this is my album? You aren't even announcing it as a double album, as a triple album. This is my album. So it redefined album, the digital age, starting with CDs. Actually, it turned it around to misunderstanding what an album is. And I think that the vinyl representation of an album is the most pure. When we put out the Sparkle album, whether it be a CD or digital, we announce it as an Act 1, Act 2, Side 1, Side 2 experience, even if it's in the digital domain. So the thing doesn't go on forever. There's no great Picasso painting that doesn't have a frame on it. The limitations defines what the work of art is. So I just thought I'd share that.
Yeah. No, I hear you. You won't get an
Have you had
argument
enough
from me.
of us, Michael?
I think, according to my wife, I could talk music all day and all night. So
All day, all night, Marianne.
there you go. So, but
All
I
right.
don't want to intrude on you guys anymore. But yeah, there's
No
a lot of
problem.
stuff that we could have talked about. We didn't have time to get into here. So if you're ever bored and want to come back again, by all means,
You're very kind. Thank
We're
you.
happy to come anytime you want us to be on your
All
show,
right.
Michael.
Okay.
All right, sounds good. Well, tell you what, everybody, make sure you check out The Holy Brothers. My name is Sparkle. We will link to the videos and all that so that you can follow through and experience. In the meantime, Marvin, Willie, thank you so much for joining us here on Music Night at the Majestic. Everyone, have a good night.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
This has been Music Night at the Majestic with Michael Boswell. If you enjoyed this edition of Music Night at the Majestic, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and at musicnight.net. Music Night at the Majestic is a copyright production of Starliner Media. Any use of the accounts and descriptions of this program, its audio or visual content, without the express written consent of Starliner Media is prohibited. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you next time for Music Night at the Majestic. This is your announcer speaking. Starliner Media.